Unsolved mysteries can prove to be very frustrating, as despite the best efforts of baffled experts and members of the public alike, they remain strangely unsolved. Many of these unexplained mysteries have yielded no answers for years at a time, and remain seemingly unsolvable. Number 5. One of the most intriguing mysteries of the Second World War is one that has baffled war experts for decades, and involves a high-ranking German officer who was known to be eccentric, though he may not have been as loyal as his fellow soldiers were led to believe. On the 10th of May, 1941, Germany was on the brink of invading the Soviet Union when Rudolf Hess boarded a plane in Augsburg and headed to Scotland, where he intended to complete a diplomatic mission. Hess later stated that he believed that British and German forces were making a mistake by fighting each other, and he intended to propose that the two countries join forces against the Soviet Union. But his claims were dismissed, and he was taken into custody and imprisoned before being transferred to Nuremberg, where he stood trial. But his ill-fated trip to Scotland was just one of many strange ideas that Hess had, and he was often mocked by his fellow officers and soldiers despite his high intellect. He was often described as odd and even mentally unstable, as he believed in astrology, ghosts, mesmerism, and telepathy. Some say that Hess would refuse to go to bed before using a rod to check that there were no subterranean water flows that conflicted with the direction of his couch, and he was also known to hang magnets over his bed. When he was examined by Dr. Kelly S. Douglas, an official U.S. government psychiatrist at the time, he stated that, quote, "If one considers the street as sanity and the sidewalk as insanity, then Hess spent the greater part of his time on the curb." Due to his eccentric personality, many questions arose at his trial, including what his true intentions were when he flew to Scotland, and whether he had really done so under his own volition. It's considered to be one of the strangest incidents of the war, leading some people to believe that the man who had arrived in Scotland wasn't actually Hess, but a body double, a conspiracy theory that was considered plausible even by Winston Churchill. Hess passed away in prison in 1987, aged 93, and to this day his true intentions of flying to Scotland remain an unsolved mystery. Number 4. One of Australia's oldest unsolved mysteries stretches as far back as 1952, and in the nearly 70 years since it occurred, investigators are no closer to solving it than they were on that day that it happened. On the evening of the 19th of September of that year, a 22-year-old woman named Betty Shanks had been attending classes in Queensland when she boarded a tram to travel home. She arrived at her stop on Days Road at around 9:32 p.m., where she got off and started walking towards her home, which was only a short distance away. It was a trip that she had made many times before, and hence it came as a shock to her local community when she was found deceased in the garden of a home. A police officer who also lived nearby was passing by at around 5:35 a.m. when he noticed the unfortunate scene and immediately reported what he had found. When more officers arrived, it was found that Betty had been badly assaulted and had succumbed to the attack. The investigation that followed was the biggest in the history of Queensland at the time, and garnered so much attention that a $50,000 reward is still being offered to anyone who has information leading to the identification of the attacker. Many theories have been suggested over the following decades as to who the perpetrator may be, and there may have been a number of individuals who have confessed to the crime, though these have all proven to be false. Some people suggest that Betty was the victim of mistaken identity, and that the intended victim was a doctor's receptionist who walked the same road that Betty did every day at the same time. She would have had keys to the doctor's surgery, and it's theorized that the attacker intended to steal them to gain access to the controlled substances that would have been kept inside. Police have reached out to the public on numerous occasions, as they believe that someone had to have seen or heard something that night, but they've had no response, and Betty's untimely demise remains a creepy mystery that may never be solved. Number 3. Oscar Zeta Acosta is best known for his friendship with American journalist and author Hunter S. Thompson, but his legacy remains a strange mystery that even his family has admitted will never be solved. Acosta wrote 2 novels during his lifetime, called Autobiography of a Brown Buffalo and The Revolt of the Cockroach People. He was the first member of his family to gain a college education after studying creative writing at San Francisco State University. He then attended night classes at the San Francisco Law School, passing the bar exam in 1966 and starting work the following year as an anti-poverty lawyer. In 1970, he decided to run for sheriff of Los Angeles County, receiving more than 100,000 votes. The following year, Acosta and Thompson traveled to Las Vegas to discuss Thompson's article on the injustice of East Los Angeles away from any police supervision. This trip would later serve as the inspiration for Thompson's book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. In May of 1974, Acosta was traveling in Mexico when he phoned his son to tell him that he was about to get onto a boat. He then mysteriously disappeared, and that phone call would be the last time that anyone heard from him. His son believes that he was involved with the wrong type of people, and that he'd probably mouthed off, gotten into a fight, and his life was taken. Thompson reiterated Acosta's son's theory, stating that due to his addiction to alcohol and illegal substances, he very likely lost his life in a deal gone wrong. Others have speculated that his life was ended to neutralize his political power. As he was seen as a powerful attorney, his disappearance has never been investigated by any official channels. However, in 1977, Thompson launched his own investigation into the disappearance, but he too came up empty-handed. Thompson later wrote an article about his investigation entitled The Banshee Screams for Buffalo Meat, which was published in Rolling Stone magazine, but Acosta's true fate remains strangely unsolved. Number 2. Branson Perry, a 20-year-old man from Skidmore, Missouri, lived with his father after his parents' divorce, and he worked as a roofer and maintenance worker at a traveling petting zoo. He suffered from a condition which caused his heart to race excessively. On the 11th of April 2001, Branson had invited a friend, Jenna, over to help him clean his house, as his father, Bob, was scheduled to return home after spending time in the hospital. During this time, 2 men were outside working on Bob's car as it needed a new alternator. At around 3 p.m., Branson told Jenna that he was going to a shed next to the house to return a pair of jumper cables that he had used. When he didn't return, Jenna became concerned and found that he had gone missing, never to be seen again. The following day, Branson's grandmother stopped by the house and found that it was unlocked with no one inside. Over the next few days, he called the house repeatedly, but with no answer. She then contacted his mother, Rebecca Clino, who was told that she had not heard from him either. After being released from the hospital, Bob and Rebecca filed a missing person report on the 12th of April. Police then searched a 15-mile radius from where he was last seen. This included searches of farms, abandoned buildings, and fields, but to no avail. Police noted that when the shed was searched, the jumper cables were nowhere to be found. though they were located 2 weeks later just inside the shed's door. Over 100 people were interviewed, and it was found that in the months prior to his disappearance, he'd been experimenting with prohibited substances. On the 10th of April 2003, Presbyterian minister Jack Wayne Rogers was arrested on unrelated charges, but when a turtle claw necklace resembling one that Branson was wearing at the time of his disappearance was found in his car, police believed that he was responsible, though this has never been proven. At Rogers' sentencing, Clino begged for him to disclose her son's location, but he instead insisted that he wasn't involved in his disappearance. Despite further searches and excavations being done, Branson has never been found, and his whereabouts remain a strangely unsolved mystery. Number 1. In July of 1984, Father John Patrick Kerrigan was serving at his 13th church since he first started ministering 30 years earlier. He was scheduled to deliver his first sermon as a permanent pastor at Sacred Heart Parish in Montana on the 21st of July. The previous evening, he had stopped in at a bakery across the street from the church, where he met some of his new parishioners, who all described him as friendly and positive. The following morning, the church filled with parishioners, who were eager to meet the new priest as they'd been without one for 2 months. But as the time came for the Saturday service to start, Kerrigan had not yet entered the church, and the parishioners started to grow uneasy, as it was not the best impression to be late for the first sermon. After 15 minutes had passed, people started to leave after growing impatient, though a call was made to the rectory, but there was no answer. The following morning, when Sunday Mass was supposed to take place, Kerrigan was once again nowhere to be found, and concerns started to grow for his well-being. When he was still not found the next day, he was reported as a missing person. But things took a turn for the worse when a woman who was setting up a roadside stand discovered a pile of clothes covered in biological material by the side of the road. Included was a shirt, shoes, and a windbreaker, and police suspected that the items had been placed there intentionally. Nearly a week after he had disappeared, Kerrigan's Chevy Impala was discovered on a hill several miles from the rectory. Inside, police found a shovel and a pillow containing biological material, as well as his wallet containing over $1,000 in cash, ruling out robbery as a motive. The car's keys were found about 30 yards from the vehicle, and it was found that the car had been wiped clean of fingerprints. Immediately, rumors began to spread that Kerrigan was the victim of a serial killer who preyed on priests. As an Episcopal priest named James Otis Anderson had his life ended in similar circumstances 2 years earlier. It was also found that Kerrigan and Anderson were friends and had worked together in White Sulphur Springs in West Virginia. Despite many more lines of inquiry being opened and an exhaustive investigation into his disappearance being undertaken, no further leads or clues have ever been found. Kerrigan remains missing more than 37 years after his mysterious disappearance, and his fate still remains a scary mystery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.